Also, Christ is risen.
Truly, he
Also,
is risen.
because I was asking if that was a reference to the Lord's resurrection, I was making a reference to at least a very deep reference in my mind to a different Jack Black movie, Nacho Libre, which gave us one of the all-time great lines: "I don't believe in God, I believe in science,"
Yes.
spoken by Esqueleto.
Yeah. And then at one point, I believe he also says, "Stop judging me just because I believe in science."
Yes, yeah.
Stop judging.
Also
me just because I
punctuated
believe
by
in
the
science.
climactic baptism that Nacho does.
Felicidades.
Yes. Anyway, how's it going?
Good man. How art thou?
I'm well. I'm well. I spent the last couple of days at this consultation put together by the Fuller Youth Ministry Institute, and just kind of like some big picture, like thoughts and dreaming and stuff about ministry. It was kind of fun. Ask some good questions, see what some other traditions are kind of like wrestling with and what they're putting forward in terms of youth ministry. So it's kind of fun. Always fun to see the kind of questions that people are wrestling with and what they're playing with. It makes me extra proud of Effective Christian Ministry, which I think is just kind of like a super cool thing that we've done, and answers a lot of those questions. Is really inspired by a lot of those questions that have come out of like past consultations. Parishes keep getting into it. Actually, just heard from a parish that's about to get into it. I think they're going to put like 50 youth workers and parish leaders into the class in the next couple of weeks. So,
Oh, wow.
yeah. ECM is going super well. Parishes are getting into the small groups stuff that we've been doing. I heard from a parish in the Chicago area that's getting into it, which is cool. So yeah, people are using the resources, tuning in.
Mm-hmm.
Excited about Star Wars. I'm excited about Star Wars. My Ahsoka shirt.
It's true. She's not. She don't care.
Yeah. What else is new on your end? What's going on?
Well, we still have 3 children. They're all alive still, which is great that we've managed to not let them die or to kill them ourselves. So that's great, especially when you're locked in a very small space with them forever.
That's a double pandemic win.
Yes, double pandemic winning, all day, every day. But no, I mean, well, my littlest just turned 1 last week, which I can't believe.
Mazel tov.
I know, I can't even believe it. And she is walking. She walks now. She's a walker, not like from The Walking Dead kind of thing, although she does like to eat a lot of things, put her mouth on a lot of stuff. So maybe she's got a little bit of that running in her veins. I don't know.
Okay.
Undetermined. But she is adorable, and Ava can write all of her letters now, and that's how we're just thriving out here in 100+ degree weather in our swimming pool, and here we go, May.
Nice. It's gonna be May.
It's gonna be May,
which it already is.
Yeah.
Some other big news that's happening out there. As you guys might have heard, Ancient Faith is putting together this really cool idea to raise some funds and help out this regatta that they're putting together. And Christian and I are both a part of it because we, as you guys probably realize, like all of the ministry stuff that we do, all of the media stuff that we do, like Ancient Faith has been just kind of like a huge partner with us for the past however many years now it's been since, we pitched them on the idea of Be the Bee and then The Trench and then like Pop Culture Coffee Hour, right? And every time we've given them a crazy idea, they're always like, let's make it happen. And I wanted to invite our fearless leader at Ancient Faith Ministries, John Maddox, to just join us a little bit to talk about what's going on at Ancient Faith, how you can help, and just an opportunity for us to just kind of, again, underscore, like, we wouldn't be doing this, right, without the support of Ancient Faith. Like, in terms of, like, even our work at Y2AM, like, they cover podcast production for us. They cover, like, all these things, all these little hosts and labor and stuff. Like, we would not be able to do this without Ancient Faith. So we're super grateful, and we're totally behind them with this regatta that they've got going on. And John is in the chat. I made him a co-host, so he should be able to get on the videos. Is he here?
Unmute himself.
There he is. There he is. Hi, John. Oh, do I have to unmute you? Let me unmute you. There you go.
There we go.
Hello.
Hi, John.
There he
Hi.
is. There's our fearless leader. Yeah.
Yes.
Hello.
Yeah. What are these white things in my ears? I noticed you guys have them, and somebody put them in my ears. Any
Alien
are they supposed to
technology.
do something?
It's
They
how
give
the
you
lizard
cancer.
people control you.
Yeah.
They're there to
yeah,
give you
I'm
the brain
telling you,
cancers.
this is the real radio right
There
now.
you go.
That's what I'm talking about. It's good to see you guys. And thanks,
Likewise.
thanks
You too.
for the partnership. We love you guys and been doing this quite a long time together. So thank you.
It's great.
I know. Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you for your like support and your vision and your encouragement and just everything that you've built over the course of, the past however many years now since Ancient Faith was a baby. Because now Ancient Faith is like a big boy.
An old man
girl,
like
I don't
me.
I believe that you are what is referred to in the Augiography as an OG baller.
Oh no.
Yes.
I've heard that referred to. Our
OG
Father among the
baller,
saints, the OG
John.
baller.
OG ball. I'm gonna have to look it up, but
It's in there.
I think
It's in
I'm
there.
honored, but I'm not sure.
I think.
Somewhere in the Synaxarion. This day in the Holy Orthodox Church, we commemorate our Father among the saints, the OG baller.
I think I'm
All right.
honored. That ambivalence is normally the way people react to
Is
the things
it?
that we say.
Yeah. They're like, I think that's
the way it happens
sacrilegious.
these days.
I think I'm honored. I'm Ron Burgundy.
I
But
lost
anyway,
you.
John, why don't you tell us about what's going on?
Oh, there you are. Okay, say that again.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about what's going on at Ancient Faith? How folks who are longtime listeners,
Yeah,
new
so
listeners,
Siri
viewers
is
can help
competing
out.
with you, just so you know. Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Yeah. So what's going on? Well, Ancient Faith is doing great. We're very thankful for the many years in a row of growth, both in listenership and donors and sales and in podcasts and new content. So that's all exciting. And then the virus hit. So like a lot of other small organizations, businesses, and ministries, we were not spared the impact of that. So we saw that our wholesale accounts had kind of dropped off the face of the earth. And wholesale accounts are basically our bookstores. And so when people go to church, they walk into their bookstore, they look at all of the nice books and icons. A lot of those bookstores purchase their material from us. And now that nobody's in church anymore, for at least now, that side of the business has kind of dried up. So we found ourselves in a little bit of a free fall and getting into a scary cash flow projection for the late summer. So we've been spending a lot of time praying about that and trying to imagine, how can we make adjustments and what can we do to try to shore that up. And along came these boats behind me. The Ancient Faith Regatta was born. And what this is a fundraising campaign, which maybe some of your listeners have heard about, and I know what you guys have also participated in. So, so that's what we're doing these days, trying to raise some money, and it's going well.
Yeah, I'm going to pop a link into the chat over here for our meeting. I'm putting my personal one. No offense, Tim.
Are you now?
I'm trying to catch our team captain and pop culture editor, Tim, who is like way ahead of me, and Christian.
Tim's doing well. There's so many that are doing well besides me, actually, now that I think of it.
So this is going to go into the description when we post the video. This is going to go into the podcast description next week as well.
Nice.
So, you guys who are in the chat now live, who are listening later on, definitely take a look at it. Like we said, the work that we do at Y2AM, Ancient Faith has been like our media partner and just kind of biggest fan and supporter from the beginning. And I know personally, I think I'm going to do a video either today or tomorrow. Like, I know I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Ancient Faith. Like,
wow.
These are things that I shared, when Kevin Allen passed away, right? Looking back at, those kind of like those classic Hop Go podcasts and Kevin Allen podcasts, which like I listened to during seminary, and it kind of shared this vision of the church that is actually interested in proclaiming the gospel, and using the radio waves to reach the end of the world.
Indeed.
And, as somebody who grew up not realizing the Lord's Prayer came in English until I was 13, that was like mind blending for me.
Wow.
So I think, that was an inspiration for what we've been doing here in terms of like our media stuff. So we're grateful for the support, grateful for your leadership, and to the extent that you can, $5, $50, whatever it is, hop on board.
And Do us a big favor. If you are motivated to give a donation, would you please be sure you first support your local parish?
Mm.
We really feel strongly about that. We do not want any funding coming to us that belongs to your parish. So don't take it away. I'd rather you not donate to us if you're thinking about maybe taking $5 or $10 away from what you would normally give to the parish. But if the Lord's blessed you and you feel like you can share, this is a good time to do it because we have a huge goal ahead of us. And thank God it's going well. We're 72% of the goal, believe it or not.
Wow.
And so we'll keep rowing along and thank God for whatever harvest can be gained as the result.
Yeah, and I want to echo the sentiments of just gratitude to you, John, to the whole staff, the whole team at Ancient Faith, because I'm just tracing back through my career, like even back to 8 years ago or whatever it was, 10 years ago, 8 years ago, I think I did a little, like when I was working as a youth director for the entire Southern California deanery, I put on like a seminar at one point and asked a couple other people to speak with me. And I believe it's still under the specials at
I think it is
as the World Below. And I gave that seminar. Elisa Bialitich got her hands on it. And then in communication with Father Jason Roll, who was the director of the youth department at the GOA at the time, said, you need to invite this guy to speak at the Youth and Camp Workers Conference in 2013.
Yep.
In 2013, I went and gave a talk there, which is where I met Steve.
Okay.
And then Steve at that point was like, this is when we're going to be now, like this guy, we're friends. And then eventually he ended up hiring me. And now it's like, we're the Wonder Twins. So it's like, it's crazy how much everything just gets traced back to that one thing. And without your support, like I know I personally would not be doing the work that I'm doing now. I wouldn't have the majority of the relationships that I have now. There's just a lot that Ancient Faith kind of was the mother domino that just got everything else going. So thank
God. I mean, if we do nothing else but bring community together like that, introducing gifted communicators who have a burden and a passion for communicating the gospel, then we've done our job. And it's been so neat to see all of these content providers come to the table, doing their thing the way they do it and using their gifts for the glory of Christ. And it's been a growing family, and you guys are a key part of that. So thank you for that. And thank you to the listeners who've made that possible as well. Whether you read a book or read a blog or watch a podcast or listen to a podcast, we're very grateful to be in your lives because you're in our lives for sure.
Awesome. John, I have a couple questions for you though.
Yes, sir.
Out of, all the producers and, content makers that you have, who's your favorite?
Yeah. It's Elisa.
I knew it.
Popular podcaster.
Elisa,
yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I was going to say that too. I was going to say that too. She's my favorite.
Well, and you'd be in there if I could remember your name.
Yeah. It's Steve or I don't know.
It's Chuck.
Chuck. No.
But my real question is
so many favorites.
Yeah. It's sort of like asking so which child is your favorite?
Child. Yeah.
This one. All right. The real question though is what is the goal that you're trying to reach?
Okay. Thank you for asking. We set a goal of 80,000 and that represents the loss of 1 month of sales, just to be blunt about it.
Wow.
When we looked in our April sales compared with April of 2019, we were down just for the month of April by $86,000. And so, this tangible support right now is helping us stay alive, to be really honest about it. But I mean, we've been overwhelmed by the response, absolutely blown away by the number of donations that have come in from $5 to $1,800. That's been the range. And every little bit has helped. And we are also blessed. We put an application in for the government's Paycheck Protection Program and didn't know whether we would get accepted for that or not. But thank God we did. And so in terms of our staff, we have 17 people on staff when you consider all of Ancient Faith Ministries. And that allows us to pay our staff for another couple of months. And so, the Lord provides, he knows our need. And if this is his work and he is pleased with what's happening, we're confident that he'll provide for it at the same time. So thanks to everybody for participating. It's been huge for us.
Yeah. Thank God. And again, I think John, you made a really good point about, taking care of your parish first.
Yes, please.
Because I think like I'm a monthly donor to my parish. I'm a monthly donor to Ancient Faith on top of the Regatta contribution, and I'm a monthly donor to Orthodox Christian Fellowship. Those are kind of like my like three kind of church things that I give to every month. And again, it doesn't have to be a lot, but if you can, if the Lord has blessed you, if you've got $5 that would otherwise go to a cup of coffee, like this is a cause well worth supporting.
And some people are wondering, they often ask, well, how does it work then? You have a store, isn't that for profit? Then you have a nonprofit or a radio station. It's actually all nonprofit. It's a 501c3 for those of you who know what that means in IRS terms. So the entire ministry is nonprofit. The sales of books are just plowed right back into the content creation. And I can guarantee you no one's getting rich. People are working hard and they are dedicated. I could not be more proud of our staff. They all are mission driven. It's not a job for them. It really isn't. They believe in the mission and they give their whole hearts to it. So we're very grateful.
Yeah. Well, thank you, John. Thanks for joining us to get the word out over here. Everybody in the Regatta, keep rowing. And I don't know, any last words before we get into the Clone Wars here, John?
No, we're just very grateful. And what are you doing? Clone Wars?
The Clone Wars, yes.
Oh, okay. Okay then.
Delete.
Yeah. Well, I'm happy for you, and I hope many clone appreciators out there. I don't know.
John's like, what's that, Tanya?
I don't know.
You need me for something? Oh,
yeah,
got it.
I'll
Okay.
be right there, honey. I think it's lunchtime. Thanks, guys. Oh yeah, interference. Thanks,
John.
guys. Appreciate you. Love you.
Thanks, John.
Yeah, Christ is risen. Love you too.
Really
All right. Shall we get into it, Christian?
Let's do it. Do it. Let's do it. Yeah.
This guy does it. Oh, you know what? Hold on.
I can background.
I can background too. Wait a minute.
I
Choose
background way
version of
better.
background. Wait a minute. Hold.
Stay on target. It came from behind. Ooh.
I've got her and the shirt.
The lady of the hour.
I'm totally standing for Ahsoka here. But anyway, what are we doing this week on the podcast, Christian?
We are doing the Clone Wars, the Star Wars Clone Wars, the Clone Wars that happen among the stars.
Yes, not to be confused with the Genndy Tarkovsky limited series from like 2007 or whatever it is. This is the Clone Wars that just finally concluded on Disney Plus on Monday, on May the 4th. Season 7 finished.
Star Wars
So
May the 4th be with you.
And also with thy spirit.
Amen.
And because this is like stuff that is just happening, like the latest episode came out 2 days ago, I feel it is very appropriate. It's both very pop culture and, notice how I'm drawing this out, to give Christian time to load it up. It is an opportunity to unleash, for those who haven't caught up with the series,
No.
a sound that tells people that there is content of a nature which could
Not
potentially just do it analog, man. Just do it yourself.
I don't think that was a porg.
It was better than a pork. Okay, that is the spoiler porg. As
Can I just do a Babu? Can I go full Babu over here?
go full Bob. You never go full Bob.
Hey!
Okay, that is a spoiler Babu. Better than a porg. Yes, I totally agree. That first one was terrifying. So you've been warned. We're getting into spoiler territory. This is all new. Also, in case you guys saw last week, we did post kind of a list of like the 12 or 15 or 20, whatever it was, kind of like essential episodes. If you haven't had a chance to watch Clone Wars yet, listed kind of like essential episodes to help you get into it. So that's on Twitter somewhere if you want to find that again. But we're in spoiler territory, so the gloves are off. We're getting into it. Are you ready, Christian?
By the way, it was 21 episodes.
20. Yes. Yes.
That's
yes,
a lot of
that's
episodes.
True. I know. I apologize. Which is like literally there's 21 episodes in a season. So it's like 21 out of 140 or something ridiculous.
Yeah. It was like 9 hours.
Yeah. Sorry. Sorry.
But very good.
Yeah. Super good.
I had to chop the list down myself. I couldn't make it all the way through. I don't watch that much television, just as a rule. Like I probably watch 8 hours of television maybe in a month if there's a show that my wife and I watch together. Like that's
fair.
It, and sort of watch it by myself. Like I don't know when I'm gonna do this.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair. I have a lot more like by myself couch time than you do. So those like easy. I'll watch them all over again tonight.
Did you watch all of them last night?
No. I caught up on the latest one and I rewatched the Mortis arc, and then I actually rewatched all of the 4 that ended season 7 because they were very good. Because I wanted like to percolate things in my brain as we were talking about stuff. But anyway, where should we start?
From the very beginning.
Would you like me to give a summary of the Clone Wars?
Let's do that. Yes.
Okay.
Why don't you tell us what it be about?
Great. So I very much enjoyed the Clone Wars. I think it was a thrilling and captivating and...
Steve, I'm not interested.
Yes, Christian?
In your opinion. I'm not interested in your opinion.
This is why we're friends. This is why we're friends. It's a safe space in which we can be ourselves and vulnerable. Okay, what actually happened, just factually? So this is a
what
7...
What happened was...
It's not that bad, I promise. This is a 7-season series, originated on the Cartoon Network. It was originally canceled a few years ago, but then it came back for the 7th season here on Disney Plus. And what Clone Wars does is, as you can imagine from the name, is it fills in the details of the Clone Wars, which are like kind of alluded to in episode 2, the prequel, even though you don't actually really see more than kind of like a snippet from the Clone Wars. It really like
episode 4, A New Hope, when Leia says like, General Kenobi, years ago you assisted my father in the Clone Wars.
Yes, and now we know what that means. So all of this happens between episodes 2 and episode 3, and actually season 7 is kind of happening in parallel with episode 3. They're actually towards the end of season 7. You actually see a couple of scenes that are in the movie from different perspectives and kind of like with different characters. So it's an opportunity. It opens up the Star Wars universe. You really get a sense of like how the Senate operates. You get some of the political machinations that lead to the fall of the Republic and to the rise of the Empire, all the crime syndicates in the background. You get a deeper look into the Jedi, who come across as kind of incompetent in the prequels, and you get sort of a sense of like what's going on behind the surface. You get more depth about characters we already know, because we actually get like a way better Anakin, I think, in prequels than in the prequels. We get more about Obi-Wan and his backstory, like Yoda, Mace, and we're introduced to some new characters, like the individual clones who are there, Asajj Ventress, who's this baddie, Sabine, who's kind of like a love interest of Obi-Wan, and of course,
I think
Ahsoka Tano.
Satine. Sabine is the
Satine.
girl from Rebels.
You're right, Satine with a T. That's right.
Which is confusing that it's like basically the same name. It's like they ran out of names. Also, whenever they referred to like the clones by names other than Rex, like that's a clone name. But like Cody, I think one was Jesse. Like,
yeah,
what? This is not Star Wars. Like who? Like, hey Mark, look at Bill.
Hey Phil.
Hello, I'm Bill Kenobi.
Know him? He's me.
Obi-Wan Kenobi. There's a name I've not heard in a long time.
So I want to know, because I care about you, Christian, and your thoughts. What did you think about Clone Wars?
Well,
you want the bad news or the really bad news?
Shocking. Okay,
actually,
go on.
So it took me a while. It took me a while to start enjoying it. I was like, I don't understand what's happening. I don't care. This is churlish and annoying. Also, there's just a lot of shooting.
Yes.
And that was how I started. But by the end of it, I was like, oh, I like this. I like these people. I like how we're getting some glimpses into like different aspects. Like I thought it was a overall like a very just like well fleshed out universe that was created. I think every now and then, like my relationship with Star Wars is such that it's like I love it so much, you know, but I don't think I love it nearly as much as people think that I love it, which is funny. But I love Star Wars. I really do. It's very enjoyable for me.
Just not that much.
But my relationship with Star Wars is such that there's many times where I'm like, why don't they just fill in the blank? You know what I mean? Like, and I'm very confused often about the way, like, how they use the Force. Like, why don't they just grab people with the Force more often? Like, why are they fighting at all? Like, there's times when they just like pin each other against walls, and I'm like, you could have avoided like so many people like getting things chopped off. Like, if we just like pinned each other against walls with the Force. And so it becomes like, why didn't that happen earlier?
Yeah.
Or why don't, like in the very end when she's falling into try to catch up with the ship, I'm like, she just literally pulled the ship toward herself using the Force when Marl was trying to fly it away from her. Like, certainly she can use the Force to pull the ship toward her a little bit more just so she can get in it. Like, I'm very confused by those kinds of things.
That's fair. And maybe she was, but the ship was moving really fast. So I'll give you that
trying.
like
you could tell she wasn't even trying.
Mailing it in, Ahsoka. Mailing it in.
Put your back into it a little bit, Ahsoka. Here, come on.
Another entitled millennial.
Use the Force, girl. Come on.
Yeah.
Get a job. So who do you work for?
Yeah. Stop like buying all that avocado toast, Ahsoka.
For real.
I think so. You make a really good point about like the physics of some of the supernatural sort of stuff, like, you know, which again in the wider canon of Star Wars, right? Like when you first see lightsaber battles, they're very, very slow and plotting, and then in the prequels you get Yoda sort of like flipping around, and you know the Force is like a Force choke is kind of impressive, and then you see Rey do the ship thing like in Episode 9, and then of course so it's like as the story evolves and they kind of test the limits of what powers can do, like, that creates kind of like some weirdness. I totally get that.
Although it was very cool when she threw her lightsabers into the ground and then like spun around with them. I was like, that's a cool move I've never seen before.
Yeah.
They should do that more.
But overall, did you enjoy it?
Oh yes, absolutely. Absolutely. It took me, it was a slow build up, but eventually once we were going, we were in full on hyperspace.
Sweet.
Yeah. Tell me your feelings.
That's cool. I very much like the Clone Wars. It's a long series. I don't know that I'll be able to like watch it again in full. I think it takes a little bit of time to get going. Like season 1 is a little slow. Season 2 can be a little bit slow. But I think once you get into season 3 and they start really giving you this wider context of the universe, and it becomes kind of a little less like a serially sort of adventure, and you get kind of like these kind of mini series within the larger series of like 2, 3, 4 episode arcs that are digging into the story, almost like little movies. You get Mortis in season 3. You get, you know, Ahsoka leaving the Jedi Order in season 5. Like that's the sort of stuff that I think is really compelling. And honestly, like I think the Clone Wars gives us some of the best moments that we have in all of Star Wars. I think the Clone Wars gives us Ahsoka, who is like one of the best characters that's out there. It gives us way more depth on Obi-Wan, who is increasingly like one of my favorite characters when you just kind of have a sense of all he's sacrificed over the years. And it totally redeems Anakin. I think it's fantastic. It's a lot of fun. Season 7 in particular, and the last scene of the series, I mean, just kind of like these chilling, haunting stuff. It's a series that really gets into the dark side, not in terms of the Force, but just the difficulties of the hero's journey, like all of the loss, all of the tragedy, all the heartbreak. I think it was a lot of fun, and I'm glad that we're doing this finally.
It's good. I think it's definitely some of the most compelling storytelling in the Star Wars universe. That's for sure.
Yeah. Which maybe is a place to start, right? Because we kind of touched on this a little bit in like the Mandalorian episode. And again, like we're sort of like deep into this now with Clone Wars. Eventually we'll get into Rebels at some point too. We'll watch Mandalorian season 2 when it comes out later in the fall. Like
Mando.
Man, because they hate you, Mando. Um, like my thought is that like the TV stuff in recent years has just been kind of uniformly better than the movie stuff. You know, like the really good Star Wars stories that are being told are told on the small screen, not the silver screen. Like episode 8, you know, we've talked about this. I think episode 8 tried to tell a good story, and then like I feel like episode 9 was a step backwards. I still haven't rewatched it because I refuse to give them more money for it, but it's on Disney Plus, so I'll rewatch it again at some point in the weeks ahead. But I don't know. Do you kind of share that sense that like the best Star Wars now is happening on TV, and if so, like why?
Yeah, I do. I feel like, you know, because I watched maybe like half the first season of Rebels, and I remember really liking that. Mandalorian obviously is super good. I think that what part of the thing is with Star Wars is like with some of the movies, I think you run into like a pacing question, you know, like they're really epic stories, right? Like at least that's the world that's kind of been constructed, right? And it's similar to like the Harry Potter books versus the movies, right? Like the books like there's just this incredible like building of a world, and like you're drawn into like the way things are there, I think. And I think what we want is more time, not less time there. You know, like we want more time kind of understanding the way that the things work, the way that the people kind of inhabit that space and inhabit that world. And I think like that's what really gets to be really interesting about, I mean, because like what kid, once they see Star Wars, doesn't try moving their water glass like across the table with their mind? You know, like it's this like, again, I think like, you know, I think I can do it. It becomes this like cross homogenation almost between like, you know, their world and our world. And I think Harry Potter is immersive in that same way. And I sort of feel like, you know, I really like, I liked The Rise of Skywalker, for example, but I think that like really what the problem you run into with Rise of Skywalker is a pacing problem more than anything else. Because, you know, like, right. And I think I said this when we talked about it before, but right out of the gate, like, you know, Poe is doing what they call light speed skipping or whatever. And like, that's how the whole movie felt. The whole movie felt like there was never any time to like, let anything land, let any kind of deeply resonating moment affect you. Right.
Yeah.
Like Chewie's killed in the ship and then instantly,
just kidding.
No, he's not. Just kidding. Yeah. What would have been an incredible way to do it is like, don't show us that he's there, but then like let us discover it when Rey feels him. Like that could have been way better, because then we would have been living in the tension for like, I mean, it only still was like 15 minutes of like living in the tension of like, oh my gosh, I can't believe Chewie died. And we would have felt weight of some kind there.
Yeah.
And I think that what you get with like these, like the pacing of a season is you get time to let those things land. You get time to build up to something and then like really feel the effect of it, you know? Like the last episode of season 7, when Ahsoka doesn't want to hurt the clones, like it's a really powerful moment because like she loves them.
Yeah.
You know, she's like, they're going to die, but I'm not going to kill them because like they're good men. They were my men. They have my face painted on their helmets. Like how can I destroy them? You know, like when they're basically like in my image, you know, like there's this kind of like thing there that she's like, I can't do that. Even if they've turned against me, I can't destroy them. And that moment lands because of the 7 seasons you've had building up to that, where, you know, she's been the one leading them into battle, and she's been the one caring for them and defending them and grieving them, things like this, you know?
Yeah.
So I think that's why it works.
Pacing.
What do you think?
Pacing. Yeah. So I think pacing is a part of it. That was my reaction to episode 9 as well. Part of it was pacing, but I wonder if part of it is, you know, and this is a tension that we've talked about a lot of times, like the tension between nostalgia and kind of like retreading old ground and pushing new ground, which is going to be difficult, for fan bases to accept, which is going to be kind of risky, right? But I can't help but think that episode 7 was like a little bit of a retread. You know, people sort of like the beef about episode 7 was that it's kind of like almost a shot for shot, beat for beat kind of remix on episode 4. And then episode 9, of course, has those, you know, the backpedaling on episode 8, which asks these really good questions. And it's like, no, Rey actually, she's a Palpatine, and like, you know, kind of like these fan servicey sorts of things. Whereas I think what's happening in television is that they're really like, they're not afraid to push the limits and kind of explore new genres, right? Like The Mandalorian as a show has this like Western sort of vibe to it, and has these like long stretches in episodes where there is no dialogue and you just kind of get the solitude of the Mandalorian as he's exploring, right? Like an interesting creative choice. Or like even in Clone Wars, right? You get this like new strong female character in Ahsoka, and she doesn't have to like be a Palpatine or a Skywalker or anything to just be amazing in her own right. She's the Padawan of Anakin, and that's I think part of the reason why she develops into this strong Jedi, because she had like the greatest living Jedi training her, right? So we can kind of like draw this connection in that sort of way, but she's just kind of like this person who grew into this sort of role. So I think there's like, I don't know, there's more creativity, I feel like, was at play in some of the TV shows, and I think there was an attempt at safety. Like I think especially in that like episode 8 to episode 9 link, like it does kind of feel like episode 9 was a reaction to some of the trolls who were complaining about stuff online after episode 8.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas like, you know, these choices here, I think are just kind of interesting artists who have this like vision for these characters and these vision for these stories, like taking risks and doing it. And it's still recognizably Clone Wars. But they're also kind of like allowing us to open up the world a little bit more and get a little bit deeper into the world, rather than just sort of like, hey, remember that time? And just kind of do a riff on that time.
Yeah, exactly. Like kind of, just trying to replay like memories, you know, like looking through photo albums or something like that. Yeah. And I think that there's like I think when you have a 2-hour movie, like you really got to be measured in the risks that you take. You know, like you gotta be like, okay, well, we've only got 2 hours, and this is going to be a thing that like lives forever in the minds of people, as opposed to if you have 21 episodes to a television series season, and then you can have like 3 or 4 that you just like fall flat on your face on, and people will still come back and watch it. If you get too many of those in a row, you know, like then it gets to be like, okay, why am I watching this?
Yeah.
What's happened? I don't even know what's happening anymore. I was like, I don't know if you ever watched How I Met Your Mother, but that was kind of how I felt about How I Met Your Mother, which like the show was good, but like it just really, like at moments I was just like, what's even happening right now? Like, what's the story? Oh yeah. This is a guy telling his kids how he met their mom by talking about all the other women he dated and slept with before her. It's like, I mean, he did that for 10 seasons. It's like very strange.
Yeah.
I feel like this is probably like a couple hour, like maybe 2 hour tops conversation that you have with somebody. And then I went out with this girl who had never seen Star Wars. Can you believe it? She had never seen. So all of my buddies and I got together. You know what we did? Well, before that, I got to tell you about Barney. What was going on with. It's like, it's so weird, you know, like it feels very confusing. But anyway, I think with, you know, a television series, you're free to kind of take some of those risks and let things fail. But I think you're right. Like with episode 9, it's so funny because like JJ made perhaps the safest movie he could have made. And the result was a movie that nobody really was super crazy about.
Yeah.
You know, like people liked it. Like I liked it, but I'm not like, it's the best thing I've ever seen. Yeah. You know, it's weird to kind of come out of it, you know, that trilogy on the other side of it and think that episode 8 was the best one of the 3. But like, yeah, I think that now, you know, like I'm on the other side of it, and I'm like, yeah, episode 8 was the best. I still don't really enjoy watching it, but I definitely think it was the best film.
Sure.
You know,
and part of that I think is its positionality as the middle one of the trilogy, right? Which kind of like leaves things unresolved and is hopefully teeing things up for the future. But I'm curious actually like how the wider public is going to respond, right? Because, May the 4th is the day that the series finale of Clone Wars premiered. And May the 4th is also the day that episode 9 premiered on Disney Plus. Like, I'm actually curious what those numbers are going to look like. How often are people going to return to the Clone Wars? How often are people going to return to some of the other movies? And like, how often are people going to return to episode 9? Because I feel like there was even just kind of like in terms of like my friends, in terms of just kind of like people I follow online, I feel like there was way more excitement about season 7 and, way more excitement about Mandalorian when season 2 comes than episode 9, which is interesting, but I don't know, maybe we should get into a little bit deeper into the Clone Wars itself. And like, there's a bunch of ways that we can cover it. Like part of it is we can cover it thematically. Part of it is we can cover kind of like by character. I wonder if it makes sense because we're kind of like getting to know these characters and fall in love with these characters. Maybe that's the way to get into it. Because if I was explaining the Clone Wars to somebody, I feel like the first thing that I would say about it is this is the Anakin that we've been waiting to see. Like this is a far more interesting Anakin than we get in the prequels, who is always kind of like this man-child who's kind of like, I mean, it's not just the performance. I think part of it is also like the writing, the story. He's like this kind of like whiny teenager who gives you very cringy moments when it comes to his courtship of Padme, right? There's just a lot of stuff that does not work in terms of the character of Anakin in the prequels. But I think like the Anakin that you get here is super cool. It's just like on a totally different level. Like, did you get that sense as you were watching too?
Yeah, just like more confident and like less like more. I would say like his confidence in the prequels is like this like brash kind of like arrogant cockiness that is like an entitlement. But I didn't feel that way. Like I don't understand why so and so won't let me be. Like I'm twice the Jedi or whatever. Like. That's not how he is in this one. He's just kind of, like he just is like I'm awesome. I don't know. Like, what do you want? And people are like, are you the chosen one? He's like, what chosen for what? But he just knows that he's like a baller. Not an OG baller in the same way as John Maddox, but like pretty much a baller. But yeah, I felt like again with when you're trying to in a movie capture like the descent of one of the most iconic villains of all time, right? Like the fall of a man into becoming that. When you're trying to encapsulate that, again, you have to almost oversell it in some ways to make it like, oh, he's bad, Yeah. But with this one, again, I think you can be a little bit more nuanced and show a little bit more of kind of like the depths of how something like that happens, because it's pretty like, well, that escalated quickly, like in the prequels, like, wow, he went from being like a relatively cute, albeit somewhat annoying child to being this like teenager who's hitting on a queen. And like, it's just very confusing. Or actually she's not a queen at that point, but, and then it just escalates so quickly where he's like touching her and talking about how soft everything is. And it's weird. And
I don't like sand.
I don't. So many moments of just uncomfortableness in episode 2.
Yeah.
It's just, like I feel a little bit traumatized when I think about it, actually. I can't do this anymore. I can't have this conversation anymore. I'm done.
Good night, everybody.
Bye. The end. Go lie in the fetal position on the floor.
So maybe those 2 points are connected, right? Because like one of the interesting things that you explored in The Trench as a series is the way that like our identity emerges out of a relationship. Mm-hmm. And like there aren't that many interesting relationships that Anakin finds himself in the prequels that actually like allow his personality and his character to emerge. Whereas I feel like we get a much more well-rounded and fleshed out Anakin because the characters around him are much more fleshed out. And like, not only is this a better Anakin, but I think we get more depth of the Anakin-Padme relationship and the strains that they have of like keeping it secret for so long and the toll that it sort of takes on them and like how this constant lying wears at them. The relationship with Obi-Wan, who is both like a mentor, but is young and becomes kind of like an equal. And so they're kind of like, they are brothers, right? Which Obi-Wan says in the prequels, you were my brother, Anakin. And like, you actually see the way that they were brothers because But I think
Because
also maybe,
in episode 3, that line does feel pretty forced. It's
yeah,
like so like you don't really. I mean, you feel it from Ewan McGregor because he's an amazing actor, but the line doesn't really land. You know.
yeah,
But in this one, yeah, there's like moments, right? And like I'm even thinking about when Obi-Wan kind of it's revealed that he's had this relationship with Satine, and Anakin's like interested in that. Like, and so they're in the elevator talking about it, like, did you guys and he's like, it doesn't matter.
yeah.
And it's like it's this really like just human moment. When he's like, all right, I'm gonna go, and he's like kind of teases him even like in a moment of peril. He's like, I'm gonna go deal with the droids, you go save your girlfriend.
Yeah.
And like, all right, wait, she's not my oh,
Anakin, my brother.
next time, Gadget. but I mean, you see those moments where you're like, oh, okay, like they're buddies and they're broing out a little bit and kind of cracking jokes, and at certain points, like there's also like moments where they both say things along the lines of each other, like I know you, I know how you are, or I guess I shouldn't expect anything less from you, or I know better than to whatever with you, because there's this moment I think you do get of like them really knowing each other, right? Of kind of having like an owner's manual on one another, for lack of a better way of putting it, being like, I know exactly how you operate, and I can respond to you in that way, which is really pretty cool. If only we all had access like that to one another to know how each other really operates,
which like psychologically can ring true, right? Because there are definitely the people who are closest to us in our lives can see us in a way that we can't see ourselves, which is like the whole point of having a spiritual father, of having close friendships, right? Like it's like the way that other people sort of see us and look into our heart in a way that we can't. And you get a sense of that happening because, like you said, Obi-Wan knows who Anakin is, and Anakin knows who Obi-Wan is, and they can tease each other and they can push each other. And you also like get a deeper sense of the flaws and the mistakes along the way that could potentially have changed things, right? Because like, so there's two levels here. You mention Anakin teasing Obi-Wan for having the relationship with Satine, right? Which I think is a really interesting choice for the Clone Wars to make, that you have Obi-Wan who suddenly like can develop this empathy for the central struggle that Anakin has, because he too has had like a love. And I remember how powerful it is because Satine, she gets killed during one of the battles on Mandalore in the middle of the series, whatever it is. And like, before she's captured, she has this exchange where she kind of like knows she's going to die, and she's confessing her love to Anakin, or to Obi-Wan, I should say. And Obi-Wan tells her, like, had you told me this at some point, like I would have left the Jedi Order for you. Which is like, Obi-Wan, really?
It's like, this is something that could have been brought to my attention yesterday.
And the thing is, it's shocking, but it's also not out of character. Like I can see this Obi-Wan feeling that connection, and yet also sort of choosing to put his duty first, right? Which gives him empathy with Anakin. Like I understand falling in love. And yet the tension is like, I didn't succumb to that. And also the tension is, and I could have imagined a different world where that didn't happen.
Yeah.
Right. Which in terms of that brotherhood, like I get where you're coming from. I made a different choice, so I'm going to push back at you. But had things been different, maybe I would have made the choice too. Like that's like a real human interaction.
Right. Yeah. It's interesting because I feel like there's, like life is just that way in general, right? Like where there's the choices that we've made and there's no unmaking them. And like and maybe we could imagine like, had we made a different choice at a different, crossroads or whatever, that things would have turned out. But it's like, man, I don't know. I'm not exactly sure what I'm trying to say here. I think it's just temptation in some ways. Oops, I hit my mic. It's temptation, I think, to kind of like envision anything other than what's real, right? Like at the end of the day, like it's our ifs and our had yous and our maybe if onlys or like whatever. They don't. At the end of the day, they don't really matter all that much, I guess. Like what matters now is where I am, and like living within the context and the reality of my life. You know, I don't know if I'm making any sense,
Yeah.
but like to be able to envision a different reality is very real. Like that's very true. You
Yes.
know, and
While also
I loved that with Obi-Wan.
while also not like falling into it and being overwhelmed
Yes.
by this thing that isn't real, because like Obi-Wan he doesn't have the same sort of petulance or the same sort of bitterness, right? That like, especially prequel Anakin, right? I think you don't get that sort of like surface level teenage angst in the Clone Wars, which is part of the development of his character, but like
I should be
you don't
able to
get
get
that.
married and be a Jedi.
Right, which again, had that been expressed differently, would have landed better.
Why does
And
everybody get to have fun except me? You
Meh,
just like Obi-Wan better.
I hate sand.
Padme, marry me. Okay.
Okay, child that is 10 years younger than me.
You have 0 character defects as far as I can see.
Yeah. What are you, 12? Sure.
I can be whatever age you want me to be, baby.
This guy courts. But you don't get that sort of surface level bitterness. It's like the character of Obi-Wan. I think the more we see him, and you see this especially when we get into like Rebels, you know, we'll get into that at some point too. There's a lot of like maybe longing, maybe regret in kind of like the feeling of pain and just kind of like the stabbing you in the heart of like, I can imagine this, but he doesn't wallow in it. It doesn't overtake him. It doesn't become bitter, I think. And if anything, they seem like they become like learning opportunities and sort of like moments of clarity and focus. Like I have chosen the Jedi Order. I just have. And this is where I am. And it hurts sometimes. And I can totally imagine my life being differently, but here's where I am. You know, it's that sort of like Father Tom Hopko maxim. It's the sort of advice that's given to Saint Anthony in the desert. Like wherever you are, be slow to leave.
Yeah.
And like, he's not going to leave, even though he
Yeah.
can sort of like realize that his life would have taken a different turn. Like there's great maturity in feeling the emotion, but also in sort of like continuing to make the choice.
He never like full on crosses into like, I wish I would have, or I should have.
Yeah.
You know, like there's never that moment of begrudging reality or hating what is in front of him, which like is so funny because like that, I feel like that is such a common sin, right? And that's like what Evagrius describes as despondency, of kind of this dissatisfaction with what's in front of us and an anger
Yeah.
at it. Like there's this, on the one hand, like a despair over what is and an anger about what is not. Does that make any sense?
Yeah,
Like,
nothing is enough. Nothing gives you consolation. Yeah.
yeah. The best image that I remember him saying is like despondency is the monk sitting inside of his cell, looking outside, wishing for someone to talk to, and then seeing one of his brothers go by and going, it's like, I wish I had someone to talk to. But then like the brother walks by and he goes, but not that guy.
Yeah.
Like, like it's like that kind of dynamic, you know, of like, ugh, like this,
Yeah.
like none of it. I just like, but I want something else. And like that I feel is a very common thing that I feel like I see all around me a lot. And like, and with, to be frank, within me, you know, this kind of like total dissatisfaction with what is, whether it's like the size of my home or like the, you know, the color of my eyes or like what, like, I mean, I like the color of my eyes, but whatever, like, it's just like the amount of things that you can find yourself dissatisfied by is shocking. Like even the stuff like, you know, it with like the coronavirus stuff and the quarantine, it's like, you know, I don't know, like everyone's there's no way to make everybody happy with any of the choices that anybody's going to make. And at the same time, it's like all we can do is respond to what is. I don't know if I'm making any sense, but like, you know, I get in some ways like with the states wanting to reopen and like get life back to normal, quote unquote, whatever that's going to mean now. I understand, like I talk with some people, like I have some clients who are just like, I'm so bored.
Yeah.
I'm like, you know, and it dawned on me kind of like recently, and I actually said this in the latest Wandering the Desert, that like there's no such thing as boredom in heaven. You know, like I just can't imagine that. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Like maybe it is possible that like boredom is in heaven, but I'm guessing that probably not, because like how can you, man? I'm in total union with God. God, isn't there anything else to do? You
Yeah.
know,
Did
like
anybody
it's
bring a
just
switch up here?
yeah. It's hard for me to imagine that. I guess
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. I think it's interesting that this thing that Obi-Wan doesn't fall into, right? This kind of like despondency that Evagrius talks about is this thing that people seem to be falling into today. Um and I think like there's the super common experience of this, right? I feel like what you were describing is totally the Netflix scroll, right? It's like I want
Yeah,
to watch something, but not that, or that,
or that.
or that, or that, or that, and
Guess we
2
just
hours
watched The
later.
Office again.
Yeah, begrudgingly, right? Like I feel that's probably the most universal kind of like example of this boredom with what is, or kind of like rejecting of what is and longing for what is not. Um, and the way that we sort of like work against that, right, is like that sort of inner discipline of the soul. I saw this really funny tweet that was going around recently, which is like, well, we're all sort of stuck at home. I'm going to use this opportunity to really sort of, look inward and kind of like understand my emotions and process my thoughts. Like, nope, I'm going to learn how to bake. And like, that's how we're kind of responding to this, right? Like it's this invitation to have kind of our cell, whatever that cell looks like. And yet a lot of it is kind of like boredom or busyness, right? Like things that kind of like bring us away from this present moment. And like, when you think about the quintessential, like one of the quintessential Obi-Wan postures, right, which he gets from like Qui-Gon, I think it's like Obi-Wan being still, right? You remember like in episode 1, the Maul between the duel between like Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon and Darth Maul, as like Qui-Gon, when the doors close, like Qui-Gon is just sort of like still and meditative and reflective and not agitated. And like that's the sort of like kind of like, yes, cocky, whatever sort of Obi-Wan that we get, but also kind of like an Obi-Wan that is at peace within. Mm-hmm. And that's why he doesn't like, he kind of feels this emotion of loss and longing, but it doesn't turn into this thing that overtakes him in the same way that it does with Anakin, who like is much more of a restless soul and can't simply be in the way that Obi-Wan is like comfortable being and has the discipline to simply be.
Yeah. And I think like even the stuff that you were talking to about like the baking during this time, like, I feel like, it's not just like this is an opportunity for navel gazing either, like just sit around and like get introspective and like look at my whatever. But like to be able to, I think like while we're all waiting for the world to like get going somehow, it almost feels like we're just kind of like staring at our watches and not like using the time to grow at all for some of us, like I don't think that I have really grown substantially in the last 7 weeks. And like, I kind of feel sad about that. Like, I kind of feel like I've wasted my time. But I haven't I don't even know what I've done. That's like, I'm just business as usual, I guess. Like I, work and I see clients on video and I play with my kids and like, I read to them. Like that's been really great. But just being able to be home consistently to do that is awesome. But I think like even baking bread, like at least like you're learning something, like you're acquiring a new skill, and like that itself is, I think, this kind of fundamental living into like the image and likeness of God, right? Of like being able to take things in your hands and like to form something like that is like, it doesn't get much more godlike than that. Sure. There's other things that are probably more godlike than making bread, but that's pretty godlike. Even like in oh dang it, who wrote Deification in Christ?
Nilas, Panayotis Nilas.
Yeah. So he even talks about like scientific invention as like being in the likeness of God, like being able to like look at the world and go like, oh, this is carbon, and carbon can do these kinds of things. Like that is actually like seeing into the mind of God, which is crazy to think about. Like I never thought about science and technology kind of in that way. And he's like, no, don't get me wrong, like it can be used to, blow people up, but like that itself is inherently a God-given quality of similarity to him. And I think like the thing that you're kind of pointing to here is that like Anakin is kind of this like adrenaline junkie, you know, who's just like he's just passionate. He's attached. He is, you know, he has got very clear ideas about what he thinks ought to be the case. Like that's how he becomes Vader, right?
Yeah,
Because like his obsession with order and like how things ought to be, and like if everyone just listened to me, you know, like we would we would be able to like figure this out.
Yeah.
And if they don't, I'll just choke them.
Problem
that's also
solved.
that's also my parenting method, by the way.
Poor little Luke.
Clean your room. That's definitely Homer Simpson's parenting method. You little.
It is. It is. Not terribly effective. Yes, somehow he's always able to like squeeze Bart's neck to like the diameter of a quarter.
Pretty much already is the diameter of a quarter.
Fair.
Don't they
The
have,
diameter
like,
of a
like,
penny.
teeny tiny necks.
Yeah.
No, maybe they don't. I don't know. I can't visualize things. Do you know that? Have I ever told you that I can't really visualize things?
Really?
Uh-uh.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
I learned something
True.
about you. Thank you for being honest.
I can't paint pictures in my head.
It's okay. It's okay.
I also can't paint pictures outside of my head.
You can paint verbal pictures.
What I'm trying to say is I can't paint.
Something you could have learned over the past 7 weeks.
No, I couldn't have.
But I think you're making a good point about like Anakin, the adrenaline junkie, right? Because I think when I bring up the baking, it's like, yes, those things can definitely be kind of like virtuous, like important, helpful, beneficial things to do. I think the difficulty becomes when our busyness, which is something I fall into a lot, busyness can be kind of like a thing that distracts from, which I think like is a thing that Anakin really struggles with, right? Because as much as like Anakin has a clear vision for the world, which makes him Vader, like Anakin also has an honesty kind of problem. You think about like his relationship with Padme, which is this central thing. It's the love that sort of like actually leads him to seek how to, you know, get people to be immortal or kind of save their lives, which leads him to the, you know, the legend of Darth Pelagius the Wise and all that. You know, he, which is totally a con by Palpatine. Like, we'll figure it out together. Totally doesn't exist. I don't know how to do it. But like he spends his entire time like lying about this relationship with Padme. And like, it's interesting that there's like certain falsehoods that test the relationship between like Obi-Wan and Anakin too. Like there's, you know, you pointed out the scene in the elevator where Anakin is teasing Obi-Wan for like having this girlfriend, right? Like, go save your girlfriend. In the middle of season 7, there's this moment where like Obi-Wan reveals that he knows about Padme, right? Like he knows actually that Padme is like pregnant, and he kind of realizes that it's him even. And like Anakin won't talk about it. And there's this moment of Obi-Wan opening the door and this opportunity for them to kind of like come together with greater reconciliation and greater honesty with each other. And like Anakin kind of shuts the door in bitterness. And like that I think is kind of an interesting thing that he continues to struggle with, like a refusal to really cope with how he's feeling, a refusal to sort of share with how he's feeling. And he sort of puts up these walls with other people, which I think culminates in the season, you know, the episode 3, choking Padway, going from brother to enemy with Obi-Wan, like closing all of these doors. You know, a very sort of like throwing spears at the people you love kind of thing. But you know, as interesting as like he has this kind of like sense of moral compass and this sense of right and wrong, and I can fix everything, he also like has these secrets, and these secrets are kind of like part of the thing that leads him to become estranged from people and slip into the dark side.
Yeah, to the point where he's contained in a black helmet forever.
Yeah,
not able to actually ever see anybody face to face until he does, and then he dies when he does. There's something there. There's something there, Steve.
Let's think about Dear George Lucas. Good job.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting to me. Like Anakin is this. I still don't ever really know that I understand like what they mean when they talk about him bringing balance to the Force. Like,
sure,
because it's like, are you the one who will bring balance to the Force, and then it go away again in another like 15 years or so? Like, is that? I mean, because it seems like it gets pretty out of whack again pretty quickly after episode 6.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you have any sense of what that's really about. Like now that we're, Rise of Skywalker's, is the Force balanced now? Like I don't. It kind of is, I guess, right, in Rey, because she's like a Skywalker Palpatine crossover.
Yeah, because like so there's one of the things that we see in episode 9 is, or here, right, is all the voiceovers of the Jedi from ages past. And one of the things that the voice of Anakin calls out and says is like, bring balance to the Force
Yeah.
as I once did.
Yeah.
Right. Or something along those lines.
Yeah.
I forget the specific framework. So it's like, yeah, I wonder about that too, because we get in the Clone Wars, we get kind of this really deep look into what it potentially means for Anakin to be this chosen one in season 3. We have this like the Mortis arc, as it's called, right? For those who haven't seen, like there's this figure of like Mortis, which is like a space station-y sort of thing in space, Anakin and
That's
Obi-Wan.
no moon.
It's a giant hexagon or trapezoid, or
Obi-Wan
tetrahedron, I
Kenobi.
should say. Know him? He's me.
I wonder if he means old Ben Kenobi.
It's amazing that this like series, which has all these like really deep, wonderful, nuanced moments, also has those very silly like, it's you, right? Anyway, it's like the Groucho Marx of disguises, like the glasses and nose.
Yeah, exactly.
So like, it's like they go to this place where they see, I guess like personifications of the Force, right? There's the father, there's the son, and the daughter, or no articles, I guess it's father, son, daughter. And like the daughter is this interesting kind of like representation of the light side of Force. The son is like this dark side of the Force. He is and is not a Sith, right? He's kind of just this agent of passion and chaos. And father is supposed to sort of like hold them in balance. And when they have those initial conversations, like he tells Anakin, like, I'm getting old, I'm going to die. You need to take my place and keep these two aspects of the Force in balance. So like initially there's this like cosmic calling that Anakin has. Like you're going to sort of like take the place of this supernatural personification of the Force kind of being and keep like in a very big picture sense, like the light and dark balanced. And that's not what happens, of course. Like the light ends up dying, the daughter dies, like son ends up dying, Anakin actually ends up killing him. And, like chaos begins to sort of like spiral out of control. And his calling sort of like shrinks, I guess you can say. Like instead of being this kind of cosmic, not necessarily once and for all, but at least for an age or an eon, right? I don't know how long the father was there. He was called to keep these things in balance. But then eventually like his balance just becomes, I guess, killing the Emperor, which then again, like in episode 9, like he didn't actually kill the Emperor. So what is the balance that he actually brought in? It's very interesting, right? Because like as I was rewatching the Mortis arc again, it's almost like there's something very interesting, like Adam level about that, right? Like you read it, like Nalas talks about this, the way that the fathers will talk about like the cosmic call of Adam to be kind of the priest of creation. You'll see like Maximus the Confessor, like who talks about like this call of Adam to really like lift up the entire world and to kind of like be this priest of creation so that, God can sort of like be reconciled to the world. And he falls, and this is where like the Son of God needs to step in with the incarnation and sort of like do this priestly role. The new Adam needs to step in and do this priestly role that the old Adam doesn't, right? Again, oversimplification of stuff. But it's like there's something there. It's like Anakin had this kind of cosmic call to keep things in balance, and he doesn't live up to that call, and then he just ends up becoming like a important but still relatively minor player, because now like Rey is kind of like the next generation's chosen one for a time, and like who knows what's going to happen in the future. But it's not the sort of like father figure that Anakin was originally called to be. Like he blew it. He blew it in a sense. So yeah, I'm kind of left with those questions too. Like, what does it mean? Was there like a deeper sense in which he was called to be the chosen one and he failed? And like, he's kind of has this like secondary calling now going forward, which is not as consequential or deep going forward. But I don't know. There's something about it which is very Adamic about it. Like,
well, I mean, I think like there definitely, whether or not within the Star Wars universe we ever actually see kind of like, the light and the dark in true balance and what that, in terms of what that actually means or looks like or whatever. I think there's some element of it that's like, that I find that really resonates is true, you know, like for Master Yoda always to be saying that a Jedi must have no attachments, like this kind of thing. Like
Yeah.
you begin to inherently see how that's just like this pressure cooker that no one can really live up to.
Yeah.
To the point where, it's almost like they're so unattached that they're just easily blown around, right? Like that they have nothing to stand for really, because they are just like these airy. I mean, like the daughter perfectly exhibits this, that there's like, you're like, is she a ghost? Like, is she? And then only when she dies, you're like, oh, she had like a body. But like, or even when Anakin touched her and she's like, you must not touch me. I did not consent. Like that's like the thing there, right? Like
That was very strong bad.
yeah. Oh no, take your hands off of me. But like, please watch The Mask. But it's like, it was weird because I was like, oh, she has a body. Like there was something like uncomfortable about that to me, that it didn't make sense to me. And her hair like kind of was like blowing with wind or whatever, that it wasn't blowing anywhere. It just is this weird airiness that, that I feel like perfectly, exemplifies the light side as just kind of these airy, unattached, kind of like head in the clouds people who don't actually have feet on the ground to see what's happening right in front of them, right? I mean, even when, remember like back in December when we could actually be in the same room together and do things, we watched Attack of the Clones.
Yes.
And like right from the beginning, it's very obvious that Count Dooku is the bad guy.
Yes.
It's very obvious. And there's just like so many moments where they're like, Dooku, oh, he was a former Jedi and he left and he's rich. And then at one point they're like, only somebody with the training of a Jedi and a lot of money could have done something like this. But there's no
Who
way.
could it be? Yeah, he's honorable. He's honorable.
And it's like, it's so dumb. Like they're so dumb. You're so dumb for real.
Yeah.
You don't have to come and confess. We're going to find you.
Yeah.
You don't have to come and confess. We're looking for you.
See, this is a really good point, right? So there's another sort of piece that I want to bring to this conversation too, because you're talking about the way like the unattachment of the Jedi doesn't make sense, and it becomes this kind of pressure cooker, and how like it actually like maybe leads the Jedi to be dumber and less wise than they can be. And I think like you combine that with an observation that Ahsoka has in season 7. I think it's in maybe the last episode or the second to last episode. She's talking to Rex and she's like, we talk about the Jedi as if they're these kind of like wielders of the Force and these kind of like monastic sort of figures. But I feel like I've just been a soldier and a policeman my entire time since I was a Padawan. Like we're very much attached in conflicts in whatever it is, right? So it's almost like a hypocrisy that the Jedi were living, which actually, because like the first thing that comes to my mind is what we talked about last week, like, with new men in a monastery. Like, it makes sense for monastics to be unattached from certain things because they like are attached to a particular community and their particular sort of, service. And like that grounds them. And it's much less attachment maybe the rest of us has. Like your job is to sort of feed the chickens and you show up for church and you do your prayer. And like, that's your job, right? Those are the things that you're attached to and you do it here. As opposed to like Jedi are not attached to anybody, but you're going to visit like a different planet every week and you're going to be involved like in different negotiations every week. And you're going to come across these people and maybe you're going to sort of like pull an Obi-Wan and meet this really amazing like female leader of the Mandalorians and like fall in love with her and not be able to do anything about it. And maybe you're going to be an Anakin and like how do you do attachment not cloistered in a sense, right? Like how do you do attachment? Like if the Jedi were sort of more monastic figures and we're Force wielders and we're kind of there as opposed to involved in every trade dispute, right? And like police actions all over the place, like their lack of attachment was a lie. And it sort of like makes it even that much more of a pressure cooker because they were deeply attached. Yeah. Dissonant. Yes. Dissonant. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I definitely feel like, this is something that you and I have talked about a lot within Orthodoxy, like kind of seeing these like dual narratives that kind of exist, right? That like we talk about like we talk about how like it's the true faith and it's like the most important thing and the whatever, but like kind of at the end of the day, it stays this kind of order that we're a part of, but doesn't really impact our day-to-day dealings. You know, we get involved in trade disputes, and we get involved in fights about church festivals, and we get in, you know, we confuse the politics of our time with like the actual call of the gospel.
Yeah.
You know, and I've seen some of that here too. Like I've you know, there was some pastor that died from coronavirus because he was like, you know, I'm essential and I need to be at church, and like the people need church and whatever, and like he ended up dying of coronavirus. And like there's this weird dialogue around that I've seen where people have praised him as like a martyr almost, like for choosing to like still go to church and choosing to do his thing or whatever because of his own essentialness, which to me is like I just have a really hard time, like, and I'm trying to be as generous as I can to that, right? Because like I get that, man, I don't know. I think at the end of the day, like I just don't feel like we need, like, that God needs church to move in us as much as we need church, but can survive without it right now. I don't know if I'm making any sense, like, but it gets wrapped into this kind of like, this guy's a hero for, you know, expressing his right as an American to have freedom of religion or whatever. Like somehow he's, you know, Nathan Hale.
Yeah.
Like, give me religious freedom or give me coronavirus. Like it's and it feels just so, man, like arrogant. It feels arrogant to me, for lack of a better word. And I have a really hard time hearing the voice of the Lord in it. I don't know if I'm making any sense. I'm just kind of saying things, I think. But I think like the Jedi kind of operate in that same way, you know, like to have these ideals that they speak of love and sacrifice and whatever. And we as Christians like do that. And yet, you know, when it comes to like our pocketbooks, we get really tight all of a sudden. Or when it comes to our time, we get really tight all of a sudden.
Yeah.
You know, like I'm willing to, it's Meatloaf. I do anything for love, but I won't do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Because love becomes this very kind of constrained thing that we can sort of define and put borders on. In the same way,
so much as it's convenient for me.
Yeah. 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 Or I can fully sort of wrap my head around, or my emotions around, or whatever it is, right?
And as long as it doesn't violate any of my rights.
Yes. Yes.
I just feel like Jesus doesn't care about our rights.
That's fair. I mean, because again, like, are we thinking about things as Americans first, or are we thinking about things as Christians first? You know,
because I care about other people's rights for sure. Like,
yeah.
I don't think that we should not be like, nobody gets rights.
No, sure. Of course. Of course. You know, because I contrast like what you're talking about here with like the witness of like Saint Nicola Yanni, for instance, like in the first part, like he died during like the Spanish flu pandemic, right? But if I understand the history correctly, like he died going around and like ministering to people who were like sick and suffering. Right. It wasn't like, I don't think it was about like the push to sort of like make sure that Vespers could happen. It was like going
to go to church. Yeah.
Yeah. It was like going to the sick beds of people who needed him. And that I guess is some of the difference between, you know, it's an exploration that we have here with like the Jedi are not synonymous with the Force, right? And like the Jedi should be expressions of the Force. They should be keepers of the peace, is like Haziel says over there, right? Like that was the phrase that Ahsoka said. Hello,
my man Haziel.
Hello there. To use a Star Wars greeting. You know, they weren't anymore. Like they actually became kind of like this just destructive force that were sort of more interested in their own kind of institutional advancement or their own sort of institutional security. Like I've kind of seen this in my own way, right? Like, you know, my day job is with the Greek Orthodox Archdiocese, and my home parish is like in the Antiochian Archdiocese. And like, we talk about how like the Orthodox Church is one, and we talk about how, you know, like it's the same Eucharist and so forth. But I have like had interesting pushback from people, thank God not at work or anything, but like just people sometimes when I go around who are like scandalized by the fact that, you know, I don't go to attend a Greek parish, right? As if like it's not the same Eucharist or whatever it is, you know? There's the difference sometimes between kind of like the essential truths that we're talking about, and we kind of like try to put borders around those truths. Which is why I think like Ahsoka becomes such an interesting character, right? Because she continues to grow in the Force. You know, you have like, she clearly like grows a lot as a human being and as a Force wielder between when she leaves the Jedi Order and when you see her at the end, because like Ahsoka in season 7 is just absolutely nuts.
She's out of this world. Good.
You know, and you see her again in Rebels, like you see her kind of like in the later canon. She might be in season 2 of The Mandalorian. Like we're going to get more of Ahsoka, I think, but she walks away from the Jedi Order. Like this kind of flawed thing that actually isn't living up to the like ideals. Right. And I think that's like a call to repentance for us as like American Christians, as American Orthodox Christians. Like, what are the ways that we are, you know, putting our kind of like institutional response over like the actual call of the gospel, right? What are the ways that we are putting whatever in front of the Jedi Council, in front of the Force? What are the ways that we are turning away from being keepers of the peace, and we're actually just becoming like culture warriors, right? Like we're kind of narrow partisans rather than like Christians who are kind of preaching the truth of the gospel to all people. Like I get that, and I think that's why like Ahsoka's tension and story arc I think is so fascinating.
It's always kind of funny to me. Like I just had this thought, like that it's funny to me when Christians are somehow shocked that they're offended, or that like, like that people like, I don't know, like what do we expect? I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, well, I shouldn't be offended by these things.
What do you mean?
Of course I mean, just like the idea that somehow like there's an affront of some kind that is either perceived or real, and like people respond to it by being like surprised. That like let's say that, you know, closing down churches or whatever is religious persecution. Let's just say that it is, for the sake of making a joke. Let's just say that. Why is that? Like, why are we so shocked if that's happening? Like, didn't Jesus say that was going to happen? Like, what? Like, what's the surprise? I guess, you know. And I think that what's perhaps the most shocking to me is that, like, you know, that like I just don't see like the Lord getting upset at his own persecution, or the apostles getting upset at their persecution, or whatever, right? Like even when like James and Peter, or John and Peter, are like taken out of the temple because they're preaching in Acts, and they're like, you guys, you really need to stop it, knock it off. And they're like, okay, sorry. And then they just go back the next day, and they're like, dudes,
yeah,
we told you. And they're like, I know, but we can't help it. You know what I mean? It's not, they're not there because they're like, it's our right to be here. We deserve to be here, right?
Yeah.
We want church. We want church. We want church. They're just like, we're in love with this dude. We can't stop talking about him.
Yeah.
You know, like, but they're breaking like civil rules because of love, and not because they somehow think that they're exceptions, or that it's their right. I don't know if I'm making any sense right now, but like,
and they're not endangering anybody else at the end of the day either.
Right.
You know, they put their own heads on the chopping block, and they do accept martyrdom when it all
or like
comes down to
disobeying
it.
the Lord. Like the Lord did not tell them not to go.
Yeah.
You know, like our bishops have told us not to go.
Yeah.
Like, okay.
Yeah.
Oh man, it's just like it
Which is
baffles me
hard
a little bit. I think, yeah,
because I'm having like a conversation back and forth on a YouTube comment with somebody who's talking about this and how it's like tearing the community apart.
yes.
Right. And it's like, which is tragic, right? Because it's like our bishops are telling us like, this is how we're doing it. Right. And the fact that we kind of like, you know, if is this the thing that's really going to cause us to go into like open rebellion? You know, that's really a shame. That's really a shame.
Especially when it's not like other stuff too, right? Like, and we don't care for the poor, and like all these other things that we actually have been commanded by the Lord to do that we don't do,
And we're okay not doing it.
and we're okay not doing, and we think that that's Christianity.
Yeah.
We're actually like, you know, like the Lord says, give to the poor, but like only so far as you know that they're not going to buy drugs.
Yeah.
But give to the poor only insofar as you know that they actually need it and they're not trying to rip you off. Give to the poor only. That's not what the Lord says. He just says, like, if someone asks you for, like, you know, to walk 1 mile, go 2. Someone asks you for your cloak, give them your shirt as well. Like,
Yeah.
giving to the poor is not like, you're not saving them. They're saving you from your own interest in yourself. Like, they're like, hello, the world is out here. Come get out of your own head and pay attention to somebody freaking else.
Yes. This is where Jesus
For once
is.
in your stupid life, like, you know, get out of your own head and like
Yeah.
look at the world around you and like love somebody and see them, look them in the eye. Like, this is the gospel of our Lord, not like, above all else, make sure you get to the cup, even if it's like recklessly endangering other people.
Yeah.
But we're happy just being like, well, you know, make sure that you give plenty of money to the church so that we can get stones from the Holy Land, so that we can build a temple that looks like a temple in the Holy Land. And we can have like some iconographer come all the way from freaking wherever to paint our walls. But make sure you don't give too much money to a poor person so that they don't buy heroin.
Yeah.
It is insanity.
Yeah. Which you don't know for sure, but you're kind of assuming, and it's okay to assume.
Yeah, it's okay to judge people if they're poor. It's
Yeah,
okay to
it's-
judge people if you think you know what they're going to do.
It's okay to assume the worst about them.
Exactly, because they're poor.
Yeah.
And you just don't know. They're probably on drugs. That's probably how they got poor.
Yeah. There's
It's crazy.
there's a lot of cognitive dissonances that we kind of
Yes.
fall into as human beings, right? You know,
Yes.
like there's that. I think to go back to the point you were making about, you know, like kind of like our rights as Christians and our sort of like comfortable Christianity. Like, it's very funny that sometimes the same people who are like, you know, the church fell apart when Constantine legalized Christianity, right? And like, that's when, you know, like Christians stopped being Christians, and it wasn't until the Protestant Reformation or whatever it is. But now we're totally cool having kind of like, you know, a certain level of Christian that's kind of like cozy with like the current, you know, like, this is not bad for us, but that was bad for us. Like, I don't even get like what kind of our vision of what sort of establishment Christianity is. Like, we want it to exist here, even though when it's happened before, we've said it's bad, right? And apparently there's this like falling away that existed for 1300 years or whatever. Like, it's weird. Like, the human mind is capable of sort of believing very incompatible things. You know, like, even to your point, like, yes, of course we know we're not supposed to judge, but in this case, it's totally cool. Like, we're very capable of believing things that like we kind of know are not true, but
It's cool to judge people if you think you're right about it.
yes, yeah, it's cool. It's cool to be disobedient if you think you're better than the person who's actually like assigned to make these decisions.
Yes, exactly. I think we were laughing about this last time, that I was saying like that I just thought it was hilarious that I should have an opinion about how any of this goes. Like, who am I? Like, who am I? Like, I'm just
It's not
a
our
dude,
call.
you know? And like, but that I get so thinking like, this is how they should have handled all of this. But like, this is the arrogance that comes along with thinking that like, I know what should have been done better. And I think the hard part is, right, like, we want a Christianity, I think, that helps us feel safe. And we want a Christianity that helps us feel clean and kind of like we're good, you know, like we're the good guys in the thing. We don't want a Christianity that kind of helps it, that makes us see like the villainous parts of ourselves. Like we don't want to see how we're the villains in the story, you know? But in a lot of cases, like, you know, we are. Like, you read through the parables and chances are like you're the bad guy. And
Yeah.
like,
Forget chances are, like, that's how you read it.
yeah, like you're the bad guy. Yeah. I forget exactly where I was going with any of that. So I was thinking of like Chrysostom, right? Who says like, if you can't find Christ in the poor man, then you won't find him in the chalice. And like, that to me is something that I certainly don't adhere to enough and like really take to heart. Right. But like, you know, all the people who are clamoring about like, we got to get to church to take communion. Like, I wonder, are they the same people who are saying like, screw the government telling us to be 6 feet apart from one another. We need to go and like find people on the streets and like bring them into our homes. And like, we need to make sure that they're taken care of and that they get health care and that they would like, are we rallying for that as well? Because that's equally, according to Chrysostom, they're on the same level.
Yeah.
Finding Christ in the poor man and in the chalice. Like
Yeah.
how do we, you know?
Or even just kind of like finding Christ in this present moment.
Yes.
Right. Like, because we've talked about this too, in terms of like the longing for communion versus kind of like like, this is my right. Right. I feel like it's a very Obi-Wan sort of thing. It's like Obi-Wan looking back and kind of having
Do you
this
mean
kind
old
of,
Ben Kenobi?
know him. Right. He looks back and he kind of remembers the relationship he had with Satine, and kind of like things would have been different, but it's not out of bitterness or whatever it is. It's like, we should look back and it's like, yeah, remember when it was okay for us to go and receive communion? It's not going to make me bitter. It's going to fill me with longing. It's going to fill me with repentance. And I'm going to look forward to the day when it happens, but I'm not going to like join the dark side over it. I mean, because the thing is, like, it's kind of to Chrysostom's point, like, if you can't find Christ at work in the beggar, you're not going to find him in the cup. Like, if we can't find Christ at our home icon corner, right, how are we going to find him when we get back to church? Like, if we are emotionally agitated here, like we talked about this last week with New Men, right, where one of the monks is like, you don't go to the monastery to escape. You just kind of have to deal what it is. And the things that you don't like about your situation are actually things you don't like about yourself. Like, how much of this is like things we don't like about ourselves? Like, is going back to church actually going to fix anything for us if this is the level of spiritual and emotional instability that we're in right now? Or is it just another form of escape, right? Maybe this actually is, to your points at the beginning about sort of despondency and whatever it is, like, this is kind of the cell for right now. And if we're uncomfortable here, it's because there's something within us that makes us uncomfortable. We're more Anakin than Obi-Wan in that case.
Yeah. I've been feeling like in fact, this is, I think, maybe where the attachments, and I know we're kind of at the end of our time, but like attachments and the detachment stuff of the Jedi, like, I feel like this is where the dark side gets it right, is that like, in some ways the grounding does happen, but like through these attachments, but the right kind of attachments, the right kind of, not like, I just love all my things and like, I just need more things, like all my stuff. Like, what does Tom Haverford say? He's like, Leslie, this is your wedding day. Like, love, that comes and goes, but things,
but stuff, yeah, things are forever.
You're registering for your wedding. Love comes and goes. Things. It's so good.
Treat yourself, Tom.
But like the thing I feel like that the dark side has is this kind of grounding sensibility, right? It's the earth kind of part of the force, the gut of it, the appetitive, and given too much of that, right, we become like all desire and all body and all, whatever. To the point where the only thing that's worth doing, the darkest side of the darkest magic, is never dying, whereas the light side is, again, losing your body entirely, right? Like that's what's on the other side of life or whatever. But for us, like, there's got to be that combination of having the body and like being kind of caught into like a spiritual way of being, a spiritual way of being human, a spiritual way of being embodied. And like, I think the only kind of way that grounds us in anything is like, it's got to be love. Like, it has to be love. Like, the only, I've been trying, like, just in the last like week or so, like, to like make that like the meditation of my mind, right? To love my wife, to love my children, and to like let that be the thing that like makes this time valuable, right? Because like, if this home is filled with love, then it will feel like a eternity, or feel like a moment in heaven. But if it's not, if it's filled with this eagerness to like get back to my rights and to have things my way, it's going to feel like an eternity in hell. And like, the only kind of thing I think that's going to like make a difference for any of us is love, to lean into love and to like let it fill every moment that we can, whether it's love, and it's hard when, I've got a really like kick you in the teeth kind of way to do that. I've got 4 women here to love. You're in your apartment there by yourself, so it's like I don't know how you practice that, but like
very differently.
very differently. You know,
Yeah.
I love Netflix. I love pizza. I love,
all the healthy
you know,
habits. But you're right. And this is where we sort of clarify what love is, right? Not this possessive thing, not this thing that demands, but this thing that gives. You know, it's why, like, I feel like there's so much here, and I know we're over. It's like the difference between the love that Anakin has with Ahsoka and the love that Anakin has with Padme. You know, like even like on the Mortis arc, they talk about like how the love for Padme is going to like break him, and he should flee from that at all costs.
poison, they call it.
Yeah, because it's like this acquisitive sort of I want her kind of situation. Whereas his love for Ahsoka, which again, it's not romantic, right? It's his kind of like his Padawan, but he's always concerned with how she's doing. And you see like the level of their connection until the end of the series. Like it's much more him checking in with her, protecting her, being honest with her, right? Not seeking to acquire her, not seeking to keep it secret. It's so interesting to me that like that's part of like the development of Anakin's character. Like to the extent that he experienced real love, that's when his character like developed and grew. And to the extent when he had this kind of like false or sort of imitative love, right? Like, because again, there's issues with the Padme situation. It was more poisonous for him. And it's one of the things that drew him into the dark side, because it became more about like my rights and my this, and this is what I want, right? And why can't the Jedi let this happen? And why can't, and so forth.
And I think you even see that at the very end of the Clone Wars, in the last little shot of the show, when Vader shows up, and it's this really like heartbreaking moment, because you know Ahsoka leaves her lightsaber on whatever planet they're on, and he finds it in the snow. He picks it up and like turns it on, and it's like Vader holding this blue lightsaber, which is like a really beautiful image. You know, it's like it's just this like actual, there's just literal beam of hope. And it's his love for Ahsoka there that becomes like the beam of hope, right? That there's something in him. It's her place in his heart that kind of keeps him alive a little bit there.
Yeah,
is what enables him, I think, eventually to have room for his son. Once he learns, a son? I have a son? Oh, I'm a dad? Have you ever seen those?
Yes. and it becomes something they, again, for when we get to it, it's something they explore in Rebels, right? Because like that is the gift that he gives her. You know, she loses her lightsabers. He gives them back to her in season 7. They're originally green, and he changes them to have like the white lightsaber, like the kind of like off blue, sort of like whitish lightsaber. Like he makes them better for her. And yeah, even though he's very, very much like in the mask, you know, like that's that moment of hope. And it's cool. I don't know if you noticed this, right? Like there's a little bit of a detail, I think, if I remember correctly, in the mask. Like his eyes are kind of red, and they're a little bit translucent. Like you can kind of see the burned skin. Like it's not just kind of like the solid black mask that we get later on. Like you can see a little bit of Anakin in that moment, which again is such a beautiful thing. Like there's a little bit of him that's still there, and that hope, which gets kind of like played out later and reaches its fulfillment in episode 6. But yeah, man.
Well, we went a while.
We did. That was good. I'm glad we get to explore this. Clone Wars is so much fun.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to hopefully at some point getting to go through all of it and watch it, because it was, you know, what I did get to see was really enjoyable. Kind of bummed I know how it ends, but like I also don't really kind of super know how it ends. You know, I know like the last couple episodes or whatever, but that's about it.
Because it's not really ending. I mean, it's just that's the piece of the larger context, you know?
Yeah. Well, my friend,
what are we doing next week? Did we like, are we going to give homework?
I can't remember.
We thought about doing Rebels, but Rebels might be a lot, because that's again a lot more episodes.
That much television again.
Yeah. Is there a movie or something that we had?
I don't know. We might have to figure it out and then make a little thing, because I think we have a bunch of television shows that we had talked about doing.
Yeah,
it might just be
too
many television shows to deal with right now.
Sure. Okay. So homework wise, we will maybe by the time we post this on YouTube, we'll, because should post it by the end of the day, if not first thing tomorrow morning. We'll add a link there, on Twitter. I'll probably tweet out like what we're doing. Maybe on Instagram, we'll sort of just say what we're doing next time, but we'll get back to you soon about homework, and we will diligently do our homework, and we'll assemble again next week for more of the nonsense.
Woo-woo. Talk to you then.
Yeah. And remember, if you haven't had a chance to support the Ancient Faith Regatta, definitely look into that. If you can, again, support your parish first. If you can help Ancient Faith a little bit, again, they have been such wonderful partners and supporters, and everything we do ministry media wise is with Ancient Faith for a reason.
Yep.
So if you can help them, help them.
Yes, agreed. Alrighty. Talk to you on the flippity flop.